My name is Landon Reese, and the morning my boss handed my life's work to an intern, I finally understood something a company can call you essential for 4 years, then erase you in 4 seconds if the right investor's son walks through the door. I built Project Meridian from nothing, not from a dream, not from a pitch deck, not from one of Cade Rollins' expensive leadership speeches. I built it from sleepless nights, emergency calls, broken vendor contracts, failed data streams, and the kind of pressure that makes your hands shake over a keyboard at 2:17 a.m. By the time Meridian was finished, it was worth $82 million. By the time Cade was finished with me, my name was barely worth a footnote, and it all started in one conference room, with one announcement, one intern, and one CEO who forgot to read the contract. If you're wondering how one forgotten contract clause could bring down my boss and make them beg me for help, like this video. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there now? Let me take you back. That morning, Cade Rollins walked in wearing a navy suit and that glossy executive smile people use when they are about to ruin someone else's day and call it strategy. "Everyone," he said, clapping his hands once, "I'm thrilled to announce a new chapter for Project Meridian." I sat up straighter, for one foolish second. I thought this was it. Recognition, credit, maybe even the title I had earned 3 years ago. Then he gestured toward the door. Caleb Pierce stepped in, 22 years old, 11 days at the company, still asking whether vendor compliance meant mailing forms faster. Cade beamed. "Caleb will be co-leading Meridian." The room froze, then applauded carefully, like hostages trying not to offend the man with the key. Caleb smiled. He had not earned that seat. His father had promised Cade a $40 million investment. Then Cade turned to me. "Landon, you'll support him from behind the scenes." Behind the scenes, after 4 years of building the stage, wiring the lights, writing the script, and keeping the roof from falling in. I smiled because screaming would have been unprofessional. That night, I opened an old folder, Continuity Protection, Clause 14, C. And there it was. Every core operating right inside Meridian required my verified signature. Of course, this story is fictional, crafted with the help of AI to make the drama sharper, but behind every twist, there's still something real to take away. Now, let's keep going. After that meeting, I could not stop thinking about the first day I walked into Harlan Grid. Back then, the company did not run on technology. It ran on panic, caffeine, and Excel sheets with names like final_use_this_1. Orders were tracked through email chains. Vendor approvals lived in someone's inbox. Drivers called at midnight because no one knew which warehouse had the right inventory. One weekend, a routing error sent 19 trucks across the wrong region and cost the company $640,000 before Monday breakfast. Cade called it a learning moment. Naturally, the people who actually fixed it called it Saturday and Sunday. That was when I started building Meridian. I mapped every vendor record, rebuilt the data flow, and negotiated 312 contracts that no executive had bothered to read. I created alerts for late shipments, backup routes for weather delays, and compliance checks that caught mistakes before they became lawsuits. Within 2 years, our late delivery rate dropped from 18% to 2.3%. Cade praised leadership vision on stage. I watched from the back, holding the laptop that made his vision possible. That was the funny thing about Cade Rollins. He could say innovation and disruption with perfect confidence, but if Meridian asked him for an admin token, he would probably try to expense it. Then Caleb arrived and made the insult official. He renamed my modules like a college student decorating a dorm room. Vendor Risk Shield became Caleb Flow. My technical notes disappeared. Safety warnings were marked too negative. During his first test run, he pushed an unfinished update that sent incorrect inventory reports to 14 clients. Cade told me to quietly clean it up. So I did. All night, alone, at 3:11 a.m., while reviewing the damage logs. I found Cade's fundraising deck. There, under Project Meridian leadership, was Caleb's name, title Chief Architect. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Cade, not because I expected fairness. I had worked under him long enough to know fairness was not in the budget. I wanted a record. I brought an 18-page report, tabbed, highlighted, and painfully simple. Page 1 explained Clause 14C. Page 2 explained Northbridge Freight. Page 3 explained the number Cade should have cared about, 31% of our annual revenue, if Northbridge rejected Caleb as an unauthorized operational lead. Harlan Grid could lose $26 million in the next quarter alone. Cade skimmed the first page like it was a brunch menu. "Landon," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I think you're reacting emotionally." I stared at him. "I'm reacting contractually." He gave me that patient little smile, executive save for women who bring evidence. "You're excellent at operations. But let's not confuse that with being a lawyer." The room felt very quiet after that. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet where every insult lands cleanly because no one else is there to hear it. Before I could answer, Caleb knocked and stepped in holding his tablet. "Hey, quick question. Can I get access to the Northbridge vendor portal? Cade said I should send the demo package today." I closed the report. "No." Caleb blinked. "No. Not without legal confirmation and written authorization under Clause 14C. He laughed softly, like I had made a charming old person joke. "Wow, you really make everything complicated." Cade pointed toward the door. "Caleb, keep preparing the demo. I'll handle Landon." Handle! Such a polished word for push aside. I left his office with my report still warm from his fingerprints, and my anger folded so tightly inside me it felt almost professional. 20 minutes later, an email landed in my inbox from Cade to Legal. He had copied me by mistake. "After Caleb completes the demo, we need options to reduce Landon Reese's authority over Meridian. She is becoming an obstacle to our forward motion." I did not storm out of Cade's office. I did not slam a door, send a dramatic resignation email, or give anyone the satisfaction of calling me unstable. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and answered 3 vendor questions with the same polite tone I had used for 4 years. Professionalism, I had learned, was most useful when people mistook it for surrender. By noon, Caleb was holding another strategy sync where he described Meridian as a flexible ecosystem. Cute. The flexible ecosystem was currently held together by contracts, security keys, and one woman he kept interrupting. So while he performed confidence in conference room B, I started reviewing everything. Contracts first, then access logs, then change histories, then the authentication map I had built after our first near breach 2 years earlier. Meridian was not just software. It touched 47 suppliers, 9 freight data gateways, 3 standby banking partners, and a $12 million liability insurance policy that only applied if approved operating protocols were followed. Every document pointed to the same name. Authorized operational contact Landon Reese. Not Caleb, not Cade, not Young Energy in a blue blazer. Me. At 2:36 p.m. Ite messaged me privately. "Cade wants us to create full admin access for Caleb. System is rejecting it. Says third-level authorization missing." "Is that normal?" I almost laughed. Instead, I typed yes. Follow protocol. 10 minutes later, Cade called from his office. "Why can't Caleb access the control layer?" "Because Meridian requires 3 levels of verification for core authority. Then verify him." "I can't. That would violate Clause 14C without legal approval." Silence stretched across the line. "You're making this personal," he said. "No. Cade, I'm making it documented." After he hung up, I sent a formal notice to Legal, Northbridge Freight, and our compliance team, restating Clause 14C and the current authorized chain of command. 6 minutes later, Northbridge replied, "Until Clause 14C is resolved, Northbridge Freight will not recognize any operational representative for Project Meridian other than Landon Reese. The next day, Cade decided to solve a legal problem with balloons, catered coffee, and a slide deck. That was very on brand for him. If a building were burning, Cade would probably announce a fire innovation initiative before looking for water. The internal Meridian launch was held in the main auditorium. A banner stretched across the stage, Meridian, the future of intelligent logistics. I recognized the tagline immediately because I had written it 3 years earlier. At 1:40 a.m., while Cade was probably asleep dreaming of quarterly applause, Caleb walked on stage in a gray suit and began reading from the strategy document I had drafted, not paraphrasing, reading. My sentences came out of his mouth with the confidence of a man who had discovered copy and paste and mistaken it for leadership. Cade stood near the front, clapping like a proud founder at a kindergarten graduation. Meridian represents independence, Caleb said, a system not dependent on one individual, but powered by scalable vision. I almost admired the comedy. The same morning, Maya had messaged me that Caleb wanted to remove a vendor verification layer because it slowed the user experience. That layer prevented duplicate freight orders, false inventory releases, and routing errors that could move millions of dollars of product to the wrong coast. But sure, scalable vision, after the applause. Cade cornered me near the exit. You see, Landon, the company is moving forward. It is, I said. The question is whether anyone checked if there's a bridge ahead. His smile tightened. You should remember who signs your paycheck. For the first time that day, I let myself smile back. And you should remember who signs access authority for Meridian. His face changed just enough to make the moment worthwhile. I returned to my desk and found a message from an IT manager who still had a conscience. Cade asked us to disable your account before the North Bridge demo. Quietly, I thought you should know first. If you think Cade Rollins was right to give the project to Caleb and sideline me, comment fair decision. But if you think it was wrong to take credit for the work of the person who built it all, comment respect Landon. I'd like to know your thoughts. Monday morning arrived dressed like a normal work day, which felt almost insulting. Downstairs, the lobby smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Upstairs, Harlan Grid was preparing for the North Bridge demo, the one that would decide whether our $58 million renewal lived or died before lunch. Caleb stood in the war room, rehearsing lines he barely understood. Cade moved between executives, smiling too brightly, the way men smile when they believe money has already forgiven them. At 8:12 a.m., I walked into his office and placed a white envelope on his desk. He glanced at it. What is this, my resignation? For the first time in years, Cade Rollins had no speech ready. Then his face hardened. You cannot be serious. Today, you choose today to act out. I choose today to stop participating. He stood so fast, his chair rolled backward. After everything this company gave you, this is how you repay us. You are being ungrateful. Landon. Disloyal. Frankly, this feels like sabotage. I set 3 more documents beside the envelope. Clause 14, C. The email chain where he called me an obstacle. The North Bridge notice refusing to recognize anyone else as Meridian's authorized operational representative. I have not touched the system. I said, I have not deleted data. I have not locked anyone out. I have not violated one security policy. His mouth opened, but nothing useful came out. I am leaving the role you told everyone was no longer important. That landed. I saw it. Not guilt. Recognition. The uglier kind. You will regret this. He said, No. Cade. I think you finally will. I walked out past the glass conference room where Caleb was adjusting his tie. Surrounded by people who thought confidence was the same thing as competence, Maya caught my eye from her desk. She did not smile. She just nodded once. At 8:47, I left the building. At 9:15, Caleb pressed execute. Meridian blinked once, then displayed authorized liaison not verified. Meridian core access suspended. By the time I reached the coffee shop across the street, Meridian had already become a company-wide emergency with its own conference room, its own panic thread, and probably its own sad tray of untouched bagels. My phone lit up 12 times in the first hour. Cade, Cade again, Cade from the office line, Cade from Caleb's phone, which was creative, if not dignified. I let every call ring. Within 24 hours, Harlan Grid lost access to 47 freight data routes. 6 suppliers paused order processing because the authorized operational chain no longer matched contract records. 18,000 packages sat in digital limbo. Not shipped, not canceled, just suspended in that expensive space where lawyers start smiling. The first penalty notice arrived before dinner, $920,000. Maya texted me updates, not because I asked, but because some disasters are too educational not to share. Cade hired an emergency consulting team for $250,000 a week. Their job was to prove Meridian was broken after 36 hours. They delivered the kind of sentence consultants charge fortunes to say slowly. The system is functioning as designed. In other words, it was not broken, it was obedient. Cade, naturally, tried the leadership approach of blaming the nearest woman no longer in the room. He told the board I had sabotaged the launch, hidden access, and weaponized internal architecture. Very dramatic, almost poetic, completely false. The system logs showed my last action occurred before I resigned. No deletion, no lockout, no unauthorized command. After 8:47 a.m., Meridian had heard nothing from me. It had only heard from Caleb. At 6:10 p.m., Maya sent one final message, board meeting just went nuclear. I stared at the screen. Coffee cooling slowly. Apparently, the directors had reviewed the fundraising documents Cade submitted to investors. Under Meridian leadership, he had listed Caleb Pierce as chief architect. Not future lead, not trainee. Chief architect. And now the board wanted to know why their chief architect could not even access his own system. By the 4th day, Cade stopped leaving voicemails that sounded like threats and started leaving voicemails that sounded like invoices he could not afford. That was when I knew the board had finally done the math. Every day, Meridian stayed suspended. Harlan Grid was losing about $1.4 million in penalties, delayed freight, and emergency workarounds. Panic is expensive. Executive pride. Apparently, bills hourly. Cade called at 7:32 a.m. "Landon," he said, voice clipped and exhausted. "We need you to come back as an outside consultant." I let the silence sit there long enough for him to hear what begging sounded like when dressed in business language. "I do not come back," I said. "My company takes clients." He paused. "Your company, Reese Strategic Systems, LLC. I had filed the paperwork the afternoon I resigned. Nothing dramatic, just a clean name, a business account, and a reminder that if they wanted my expertise, they could stop renting it at employee rates. I emailed the terms within the hour, a 6-month consulting contract, $1.2 million paid up front. Formal recognition that the Meridian protection modules were my intellectual property, and a corrective letter to Northbridge explaining that Caleb Pierce had never been the system's chief architect. Cade called again. "This is outrageous." "No," I said. Outrageous was calling me an obstacle while standing on my work. "This is pricing." The board signed by noon. Our first recovery meeting was held over video. Caleb appeared on screen looking smaller than I remembered. His tie loosened, his confidence finally out of stock. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I was chosen because I was ready." I looked at him for a moment. "You were chosen because your last name came with funding. Now you get to decide whether that ruins you or teaches you." He nodded. And for once, he listened. I restored temporary access in 72 hours. Nothing more. Then Northbridge emailed me privately. They wanted to leave Harlan Grid and contract directly with Reese Strategic Systems. Cade's next move was touching in its desperation. Since he could not prove I had broken Meridian, he tried to prove I had stolen it. By Monday morning, a rumor was moving through the industry. Landon Reese had walked out with proprietary technology. Cade dressed it up as protecting shareholder interests, which was corporate English for throwing gasoline on a legal fire and calling it strategy. I did not panic. I sent a folder. Inside were the copyright registrations for the protection modules I had built on my own time. The email where Cade listed Caleb as Meridian's chief architect. The IT request ordering my account disabled before the demo. And the access logs showing every suspicious attempt after I had already resigned. No speech, no drama, just receipts. Northbridge terminated its contract with Harlan Grid, citing misrepresentation and security risk. 2 more clients followed within a week. In 30 days, Harlan Grid lost $74 million in revenue. Cade had wanted a public fight. He got a public spreadsheet. The board meeting happened on a Friday. I joined by video as an external consultant, which meant Cade had to glare at me through a screen he was paying for. This entire system was designed to depend on her. He snapped. That is the problem. Maya, calm as a surgeon, leaned toward the table. No, Meridian was designed to depend on contract authority, audit trails, and verified access. Cade ignored all 3. The room went still. Then Caleb stood. His voice shook, but he did not sit back down. I need to say something. I was not the architect of Meridian. I was used to reassure my father and the investors. Landon built it. I let people believe otherwise, for once. Cade had no comeback polished enough to save him. The board voted in closed session. By evening, Cade Rollins was asked to resign. Then came the offer I never expected. Harlan Grid wanted to sell me Meridian's remaining infrastructure for 20% of its original valuation. Apparently, even ruined empires need clearance sales. 3 months later, Harlan Grid became a cautionary slide in management seminars. The lesson was simple enough for all executives to understand: do not sideline the only person who knows where the system breathes. Cade Rollins disappeared from the startup circuit. No more podcasts about bold leadership. No more keynote speeches about disruption. Apparently, disruption felt less glamorous when it disrupted his own career. As for me, I built Reese strategic systems the way I wished Harlan Grid had been built: clean contracts, clear ownership, documented authority, and no interns promoted by bloodline. In our first quarter, we signed 5 major logistics clients and brought in $12 million in revenue. I did not frame the number. I just paid my team on time and slept better than I had in years. Then came Project Solstice, the platform I designed from Meridian's best lessons and worst scars. It was steadier, more transparent, and impossible to hijack with a smile and a funding promise. At a conference in Chicago, someone asked if I regretted leaving, since Harlan Grid had collapsed after I walked out. I answered honestly, I did not make that company fall. I just stopped holding it upright with both hands. The room went quiet, then rose in applause. A week later, an industry headline crossed my screen: Reese Strategic Systems acquires remaining Harlan Grid assets. I read it once, smiled, and closed the article. They tried to erase my name from the system. In the end, I owned the best part of it. What stayed with me most is this: never confuse being quiet with being powerless. Sometimes the strongest move is not fighting for a seat at the table, but building your own table and making sure your name is written on every piece of it. I learned 5 important lessons. First, I learned that my value does not disappear just because someone refuses to recognize it. Second, I learned that hard work needs protection through proof, records, contracts, and clear boundaries. Third, I learned that loyalty becomes painful when it is given to people who do not respect it. Fourth, I learned that people who steal credit often fall apart when they are forced to carry the responsibility behind that credit. Fifth, I learned that walking away is not always losing. Sometimes it is the moment I finally choose myself. And what about you? Did you learn something from this story too? Share it in the comments, because your lesson might give strength to someone else. If this story touched you, Please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth today.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.